Good evening and welcome to Italian Impact Weekly. I am your host, Steve Stefano Mancini, and I want to thank all of my listeners for tuning in once again as I try to keep this thing weekly, but the tides of life often do not allow that. So again, I appreciate the folks that are continuing to follow me out there on all the different social media platforms. As you know, whatever you're listening to me on, I'm available on that channel. And if you didn't know it, I'm available on other channels. So basically, we're available on all the streaming service channels. Well, how would I know that? Simple. Go to ItalianImpactWeekly.com. Again, that is ItalianImpactWeekly.com. And as we've been continuing kind of our discussion with different filmmakers, actors, producers, voiceover folks, I mentioned last week that I was going to bring somebody in from the Pennsylvania Film Commission. And I have a wonderful guest, and we're going to talk about a very wonderful program that I think a lot of people don't know exists, and maybe they don't understand the benefits it brings. So I want to welcome my guest. It is Gino Pesi, not Pesci, as he eloquently noted before. For some reason, these gringos can't pronounce Pesi, P-E-S-I. So Gino, regardless, thanks for coming in. And actually, you're in the studio, so that is a double thank you. So welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me. And it's Gino Anthony Pesi. So you got to say your middle name, so I feel like I should get to say mine too. So
that's pure Italian, my friend.
Yeah.
You are pure Italian.
There you go. I even have a confirmation name. How about that?
What was it?
Dominic.
Interesting. I can't remember mine.
You don't remember yours?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I kept my same name because Stephen was the first martyr. And I thought, well, it doesn't get any better than this.
So wait. What's your middle name?
William.
So you're Stephen William Stephen?
Stephen William Stephen. It's nuts. It's perfect because it goes along with everything about me. Well, just a little bit odd there, folks. But no, Gino, first of all, thank you again for coming in. I do appreciate that. Real quick for the folks, well, how do I know you? I do want to chime in about that because this is kind of, when I started dabbling in the film business, as I like to say, I don't know a lot of folks that can provide different types of assistance. And what I kind of learned the hard way is there's a lot of moving pieces. In fact, you were mentioning before that you actually taught for a while, so we'll talk about that. But, I've been doing podcasts and radio for a little while. And, this documentary that was kind of the impetus for me applying for the tax credit.
Fedelta,
Soldati Prigionieri. I was introduced by a friend who was familiar. She's been in the film business for a while and, did a lot of, she does a lot of, what they call it, they go out and they scout the locations. Right. Great person. And, she said, have you applied for this credit? And I said, first of all, what are you talking about? And so that's how Gino and I met, was through the application process. And, I have been awarded a tax credit, which is wonderful. And, I'm appreciative of that because, just really quick, I want to mention something is film is not something you just say, you know what, I'm going to go do this. There's a lot of particularity, everything from the legal requirements to what are you going to film, to screen, the kind of technical support, post-production. But where you film has pros and cons. There's a reason a lot of people come to Pennsylvania now and film in Pennsylvania. I remember years past, a lot of people were filming, especially like sci-fi shows. They were filming up in like Vancouver area.
No, they still are.
Yeah, there's a huge tax rates. So let's talk about that. But tell me about, what is the Pennsylvania Film Commission and why do people want to look this up?
So, okay, yeah. So we'll start there. So I'm the executive director of the Film Tax Credit Program and the Pennsylvania Film Commissioner through DCED, the PA Film Office. And what the tax credit is, it's a transferable tax credit. And this incentivizes productions to come here, to produce their projects here to stimulate economic development and growth, and obviously create and support jobs for our trained workforce. Additionally, we also create pathways for success supporting PA producers like yourself, filmmakers like yourself, and PA-based production companies. So you fit into what we called the PA Producer Reserve, which was specifically designed for folks like you. So what that does is, a project comes in here, they say they're going to spend X amount of dollars in Pennsylvania qualified expenses. And you went through this process, so you understand a little bit of what that's about, what qualifies, what doesn't. And as you can see, it can be a very overwhelming process for someone who's never done it before. And I think a lot of independent filmmakers, they either don't know that they're eligible for this, that they can apply for it, or that it's even available to them. Like you said, you had to hear about it from somebody else. But that little bit makes a big difference, right?
Especially when you're a smaller organization like myself.
Right. Your whole budget was, you had one of the more modest tax credits we've ever given in terms of filmmaking. But those little amounts make a big difference to independent
Shavings
filmmakers.
make a pile. When you're not, I'm not a $1 million, production studio.
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting out. This was my first kind of major foray into film. And so for me, it was between trying to raise money and self-funding.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge benefit. And again, if I hadn't just happened to talk to somebody, I wouldn't have known about it. And that's kind of why I wanted to have you on the show, because a couple of things that you just mentioned. One, it is an overwhelming and a very daunting task. At least it seems like it. You guys were amazingly supportive. And I am not just saying that. Every time I had a question, the response time, and listen, I used to work for the government.
Yeah.
And I even told you guys this.
Yeah.
I said, no, very rarely do you go to a government agency and they actually answer and help you and walk you along the path.
We're trying not to be the rule. We want to be the exception.
Well, you did an outstanding job.
And so we'll just give a shout out to the tax program specialist, Kevin Durkin. He's been with me now for, I've been doing this for 11 months now, and about 11 billion hair follicles less later. And I think he's been here just a bit over 6 months, but I know he was your day to day.
Right.
He was your point person. So I know I ingrained it into him when I first hired him too. I was like, we treat the low budget projects just like we would a $100 million project.
And you know what? And you guys did. And I am living proof that just my interaction with your office was so positive. It just meant the world to me. And I sincerely mean that.
Great.
And so when folks are out there and you're thinking of doing something, don't be afraid to look into these programs, because there are humans on the other end. You're into this for a passion. And I want to talk about that, because one of the things, I want to kind of get to know you a little bit too, because you said you taught, was it film production? What did you you taught in this before you came and worked in this office?
Taught acting, taught a filmmaking boot camp on the collegiate level as well, and created a course and created an entire program. But that came from, okay, so I've been there. I was that 6-year-old kid that wanted to get into filmmaking, that went and did it for 20 years, but didn't have a pathway to success here in southwestern Pennsylvania to have a sustainable career doing it. So for me, I had to move 3,000 miles away from my closest friends and family to have a sustainable career when I decided I wanted to do this. So I said, if I ever made something of myself that had some modest success at it, that I was going to find my way back here and hopefully help create a real market here, so that the next generation of PA filmmaker didn't have to do what I did and leave their friends. Because you don't get that time back.
That's very true.
So,
as somebody who's moved around a lot from my previous career, I absolutely get that.
So yeah, I didn't. I know how hard it is as an independent filmmaker, and I only stress that because we want all projects. Obviously, we want those big projects, but it's a dual approach. Your independent filmmakers are your trained workforce. Anybody that's been on a television series and talked to the crew, those crew members, a lot of them are directors in their own right, producers in their own right. I've talked to transpo people that got scripts that they want to get off the ground. Well, what if you had a pathway to do that during your hiatus? You know what I mean?
Right.
But so, yeah, it is a passion for me because it's personal too. I think it's just, if I look at, somebody, we're here at Robert Morris right now, and if somebody was graduating school and they had to decide, well, I'm either going to go to Georgia or New York or California, no matter what, you're moving away from your family.
Right.
Wouldn't it be great if they just had the option to say, what, I can make a living doing this right here and do it my way? And I think that's, if we can achieve that here in this state, that would be fantastic.
No, and I believe it's a numbers game too. The more things that people see happening, they go, wow, that's a pretty active place. If I just go into a location and there's one big film shot there, and then you don't see nothing until the next big film 2 years later, it's kind of dead. You're looking for, they're looking for a niche location at that point. But if I see there's a bunch of different, series being, and then there's some major pictures, and then there's some independent stuff going on, I said, that's kind of a happening place. At the end of the day, I know this, besides the weather, and I used to live in Southern California. I lived there for 4 years. Besides the weather, what's the real draw there?
That's it. In my opinion.
Right.
I mean, like, I guess everybody's different, but for me,
I mean, the studios are there, sure, but
Yes.
it's not like the old days per se where they were literally filming in big warehouses. I think it's changed a lot. I think there's definitely a lot more. They're out of there. They're not filming in there. They're out of there.
I mean, the whole landscape has changed. If you're still a television series, yes, there's still you still need the sound stages because they're reusing locations. But back in the day, those sound stages, you have to understand it was about lighting and sound control. You know, that was a big thing. They didn't have to deal with like inclement weather. Right. But now technology is advanced so high. I mean, the cameras are so great. You could go out. It could be pitch black. We could adjust the ISO and make it look like it's day, and vice versa. The sound equipment is top notch. Right. The amount that I've had to actually ADR, because for many years I made my predominantly my living as an actor. I remember when I first started in my early 20s out there, I had to ADR everything. It could have been like just one line on a show. I was always getting called into ADR. Now, I could be the lead in a movie, and I'm not getting called into ADR at all. So that just shows you like how the quality of just picking up film on set and what they're able to do in post. Who knows how much of that is AI?
Right. Well, like I said, the way the technology is now, it's. I still think I remember watching the old, like in the '80s, when you're watching how Star Wars was made, and they're sitting there literally moving the little the walkers and the Empire Strike. They had to move it one leg at a time, or there's a mini Death Star, mini X-wings. They blow them up in the studio to And it's like now there's no way they're doing that now. It's all graphics. It's all software.
Do you know that I don't know the Star Wars movies like big hard.
I know the old ones. I don't know the new ones at all.
But Attack of the Clones was actually the first one that was made 100% on digital. And that was like 2002. So just look at and now everything is shot digital. I think in 2024 there were only 7 projects that incorporated film into the actual filming. So it's pretty much become obsolete.
Wow. Is there an advantage to that? I mean, besides the simplicity of of digital,
Cost.
is that just what bottom line when it comes down to?
Yeah, it changed the game so much. I mean, for better and for worse, because when it became so cost efficient to shoot a movie, it saturated the market because more movies were able to be made. Time was money in film. Every take. Right. I mean, if you messed up a take, that was a lot of money.
Well, it's funny you say that because I'm guessing that nowadays, with everything being digital, and if you don't have something that has a lot of graphics in it, you could probably shoot a film pretty quick nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, relatively speaking. I mean,
the fastest I've shot a feature was 6 days.
Wow. Yeah. A feature?
Yeah, a feature.
No, let's talk about that. But I want to go back, though, a little bit more about you because I want to start because, you said you started in the 20s. Did you study film then in college?
No, I professionally, I was in my 20s, but I went to Point Park for theater with a concentration in acting, but that was a late decision too. So I wanted to act since I was 6, wanted to make movies since I was 6, ever since I watched The Goonies. I was 6.
I still love it.
I was 6 years old. I'm sitting there watching. I would put the VHS, so this is going to tell you the time frame, into my grandparents' VCR, and I watched The Goonies, and then I rewound it. I actually had to hit rewind, and I
remember. I used to have a rewinder machine next to the VCR to watch the movie again. Because if you forgot to rewind, you pull the tape out, you put it into the rewinder, and you watch another movie while it's rewinding.
I mean, I was hooked right there. And, at that time, they would say that, people like us, we don't do things like that around here in southwestern PA. And what they really meant was accessibility. It wasn't like crapping on my dreams. It was, it just wasn't.
You're in PA. How do you get to California?
Totally.
Right.
You're in the 1980s. Cell phones don't even exist yet. And if they were probably about a foot long. And
the ones that really did cause cancer.
There you go. But then think about that. I think I was 17 when the internet came out, and it took probably 10 minutes to load a page at that point in time. So accessibility, it's not so much that more films are being done around here. It's just that the allure and the mystery around it, it's not as big of a deal. Like I remember when a film would come into town, it was like magic.
Right.
You know what I mean? But anyway, I focused on sports most of my adolescence because that seemed more plausible, as if like that's
Right.
easier to do.
You'll get the pro contract.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Just keep practicing.
Long story short, when I was in high school, there was a drama teacher that saw something in me and really said, you know, I really think you can do this. And I think that was the first time somebody said, yeah, you can do this.
Another anomaly of Pennsylvania.
Right. So I went and figured it out. You know, I went to school for it for a few years, and then I moved out to the decision was between New York and LA. And New York at that time, 15% of all film and television was done in New York, 85% was in LA.
So the odds were.
If you
right.
went to New York, you needed to be a triple threat. You needed to be able to sing, dance, and act. Now, I could
Right.
sing, I could dance, but people usually told me to stop. So I was like,
I can do it.
Yeah.
I get it. Oh,
is
I get
not
it. I
good.
can do it.
So I went to LA.
Now, let's go back. Did you, you know, obviously I like to ask about the old Italian culture, and you said you weren't very, you know, did any of that kind of resonate in your life growing
Oh,
up?
no, we were Italian. Yeah. I just don't speak it. Like,
But you had the standard Italian family type growing
oh,
up.
totally. You know, 7 fishes. And, you know, I mean, my, I would say it was a mixture of northern and southern because my grandfather, I think his side was Palermo, and then by way of Argentina too, or they left there. You know how a lot of
right.
Italians migrated.
People
to
forgot that a bunch of them went to
Argentina.
South
Yeah.
America as well.
Like a lot of people don't know that Argentinians, most of them were, or a lot of them were Italians too. So that's how part of my family came in, and then I know there was Northern Italian too. I just don't know which part.
Okay.
That's probably where my blue eyes come from.
I get it. I'm the same way. Because I'm a mix between the central and the southern, and then my mother was something else. So it's like, I don't know. You know, I want to go back, though, with
Wait
the
a
act.
minute, wait a minute. What part of Italy are you from?
So my grandfather would be from Abruzzo, and my grandmother's side was from Calabria.
Okay.
So south and central. I want to go back because you kind of had the bug, and then, you know, you weren't really sure. Somebody in high school says, you know what, you might have something here. You go off to Point Park. Now, you're local, right? You're from
Yep.
Pittsburgh area. Where'd you go to high school?
I was born in McGee Women's Hospital.
Oh, where'd you go to high school?
I went to high school at so I grew up in the Mon Valley, which is that tri-county area of Charleroi, Belle Vernon, Monessen. They call it the tri-county
Right.
area, Monongahela. I went to Geibel Catholic High School for three years, and then I graduated from Charleroi. I transferred
Wow.
at the end of my junior year and into my senior year.
Okay. So you're local.
Yeah.
Then you go to Point Park. You're studying. Now, what was first? Talk about your first experiences in California. I mean, you left from Point Park and went right to California. No stopping.
I actually didn't even finish Point Park. So I left with 15 credits shy of graduating. I'd gone out there originally for an internship, and that didn't even work out. But while I was out there, I just started figuring it out, and I was like, what am I going to go back for the maths and sciences that I pushed to my senior year? And
There's still time.
yeah, I was like, no, because I took all the courses that I wanted to take, all the Englishes, my writing courses, my acting courses, all the stuff, the performance courses. And then I left these core classes that I needed to take for my senior year. And so there was just really no reason to go back. And in our business, as you may or may not know, really, if you're going to be an actor, they don't care about your degree. So that was a decision that I just made. So I started figuring it out there. I didn't know anybody. Had a couple of bucks in my pocket, not much, literally enough for probably a month's rent. And
So you really chips in.
yes, I mean, I had no backup plan, none. And
Sometimes that's the best way. It forces you to go at it 110%. Because I think if you're in the back of your mind, you say, well, if it don't work out, I can always do this. I think that actually makes us throttle back a little bit.
And it may, but I didn't believe that I wasn't going to figure it out. That's another thing. I was like, eventually. I'm like, if you don't quit, you're going to succeed at some point. So I just kept doing it. It took 3 years to get my first network credit, and within 6 years, I was making a living doing it.
Oh, okay.
But it took 3 years to really get acclimated to that industry, to find the right representation for you, that whole thing. And I was writing as well during this time. But in my late 20s is when I started figuring out that I was an educator and a teacher, and a director, two things I never actually thought I would be good at doing. I think were probably two of my biggest strengths. And then I learned that I was a producer in my 30s. And that was something I just like put off for the longest time, because what creative really wants to produce? It just seems like very businessy. But when I actually threw myself into it, I realized, I get stuff done. And it's about problem solving. I feel like 90% of producing is problem solving in so many ways. But anyway, I'm just rambling.
No. That's funny you say that, because, I was, when I was kind of picked this project up, I said, from a producing perspective, that's more almost, I hate to simplify it like this, but it's almost like project management. I mean, it's budgets, it's schedules, it's all of the nitty-gritty detail that you got to make sure this thing goes. I mean, the real, the visionary, I think, is in the director. I mean, he's got to see the screen. He's got to, this is what I want. This is where we're going with it. And I knew that I could produce because I know how to run a project. Film is a project, and it is. It's a business. It's a project. The only question I wasn't sure was the directing piece, and heck, I still don't know if I can do it. But
well, I look forward to seeing your product
soon.
Yeah,
soon.
I think the producer ideally, the producer is doing everything so that the director doesn't know how stressed the producer is. You know what I mean? Like they want.
Well, that explains a lot, because I was doing both, and I was ready to just keel over.
Right. No, that's
that's the truth.
But that's quite common in independent film. But if you have a strong, there are multiple producers too, multiple different types of producing, but producing is really everything. And ideally, if there is separation between the producer and director, you just want, because you hit it on the head there, where if the director has that vision, the producer hopefully is doing such a good job that the director can just focus on that vision.
Stare at the screens, stare at what this is going to look like when it's all done. Folks, we're going to be right back after these messages, but I do have a couple questions because you just made me kind of think of a few things. So folks, stand by. We're going to be right back after these messages. Thanks to Greater Pittsburgh Travel. For any of your travel needs, let Tom and the team at Greater Pittsburgh Travel know, and they'll take care of you. For more information, call 412-331-2244 or visit their website at www.greaterpittsburghtravel.com. For all of your plumbing needs, be sure to try Palucci Plumbing. Nick and the team have decades of experience and will get you back up and running. For more information, call Palucci Plumbing at 412-782-5050. And we want to thank the Calabria Club of Pittsburgh. If you're interested in learning more, you can find their contact information on Facebook at Calabria Club of Pittsburgh. Again, thanks Domenica and the team at the Calabria Club of Pittsburgh for your support. And we want to thank La Scuola d'Italia Galileo Galilei, the only nonprofit school in Pittsburgh endorsed by the Italian Consulate. If you're interested in learning Italian or have your children being immersed in the Italian culture and language, be sure to give them a call at 412-404-7070. And that's La Scuola d'Italia Galileo Galilei. We'd also like to thank Chris Gonzalez from the Knights of Columbus. If you have any questions about joining the Knights of Columbus, reach out to Chris Gonzalez at 412-605-9074. All right, welcome back. I want to ask you something, because do you feel, I asked somebody the last episode, I said, he's an independent filmmaker, and he's kind of just getting his feet under him. He's been doing it that long. And I said, do you feel like you made it? I mean, define I made it. When you look back, do you feel like, been there, done that, I made it?
No.
Interesting.
It's. I think my definition of success, in some ways, is different, and in some ways is the same. The part of it that's the same is, I would say success for me is working on projects that I love with people that I love, and hopefully finding a way to get paid to do that. And if I had, one of those things, it's doing okay. If I had two of those things, that was fantastic. And if you had all three of those, that's the jackpot. And I don't even know if I've ever really had all three of those things. Maybe once or twice.
Did you take jobs out of necessity then? Because you said you were in some shows. For example, what are some things you were in that you were, I won't say didn't like, but things you were in because you're like, hey, this is a good one, and I want to be in it just because it's good, not necessarily because it's my passion. And that's not being critical of it. I mean, there's,
That's really tough for me. I think I'm so hard on myself and the projects that I've been in. I think I've I think there's a part of me that always feels that I haven't really been a part of anything that's really allowed me to, or where I don't even want to put it on them, where I have really accessed my full potential in that way, for various reasons. But I've been very grateful of my career, and I know that what I did was not easy, and it's a very small percentage, even on the level that I did it on. That's really difficult to do, especially at the time where it's done. Like these days, I tell young filmmakers, just go do it. No one's stopping you. It's so accessible. You can pick up a camera. If I wanted to do a short film that somebody, like, you could pick up your iPhone. The quality's amazing.
Compared to 20 years ago,
Yes.
it's better. You're absolutely.
It's fantastic. That would have cost us tens of thousands of dollars to do like a 5-10 minute short back then and make it look like that, what you're capable of doing.
And with free software that you can get out there now, you can get these editors for free.
So there's no excuse.
Right.
So I tell people, just go do it. Don't wait for someone to give you permission. Certainly don't wait for the industry to give you permission. Give yourself the permission. But sorry, your question.
Heck if I know.
Success? Did I feel,
Yeah, we're
did
still
I feel like
yeah.
I made it? No, I felt like I had one moment once where it came full circle. Where, remember, I told you I was 6 years old, watching the Goonies, and I was a series regular on a show in New York. It was called Shades of Blue, and another Italian, Ray Liotta, was in it. Dre De Matteo,
Oh, okay.
Jennifer Lopez,
I've heard of her.
and
She's not Italian, but I heard of her.
while doing that show, why that's relevant is I remember I was in my mid-30s and I'm driving up the coast of, the West Coast, and I was going up to Washington State to see a buddy of mine, and I got to Oregon, and I had not realized, I'm such a horrible fan of my favorite movie, The Goonies, that I didn't even realize it was shot there. But I'm driving along the coast, and I recognized the beach, and I was like, no. And it hit me like a truck, and I pull off the side of the road, and I get out, and I'm at Cannon Beach. I was like,
You start yelling, "Hey, you guys!" Everyone's looking at you. What are you talking about?
I was like, this is where The Goonies was filmed. And
Wow.
sure enough, I searched it, and I was like, yep, I'm here. And then I saw that 30 minutes from there was Astoria, Oregon, where the house is, where Chunk was doing the truffle shuffle. And that kind of came full circle. And I was there I was nostalgic for a minute. And I remember sitting there. And the next time I was on set, I was looking up at this sound stage at all the lights and everything. And I was like, I remember when this was just a dream.
Wow.
Does it? So
No, I totally get it. I totally get it. Let me ask you something. You said you went to a Catholic school.
Yep.
And we talked a little bit about faith. No, we're not going to get into religion. I promised you that. But I do want to ask something. Did faith play a role in this? Like, did you feel like, I don't want to say divine intervention, because I in my personal opinion, I don't believe God says, oh, you want to be an actor? Okay, like God is not a genie. But I do think we can do things, again, it's a little bit religious, but it's me. I believe that you can do things that can be blessed. Did you feel like when you were going through this, was there ever a point where you're like, wow, this is deeper than just me living? This is like something like, wow, like I really feel like this is just right. It feels more than just because I like doing it. It just felt like this is the right thing I'm supposed to be doing at this moment.
There were times, but I would say that. So I'll start with this and say that you asked about the success and how it's changed for me. It stopped being a goalpost of things I needed to check off and became more about, it wasn't about the result. Now it's about, and I would say really the last few years where I've came back hard to my faith. Success to me is finding peace and knowing that I'm living in the way, knowing that I'm serving the highest good, that I'm serving God. Through my actions, through what I'm doing, living in integrity. That's feeling like success to me. And when I'm not, I'm sorry.
Right.
It's like that learning moment. So for me, life is school for the soul, and it's all a practice. And it's like one moment is just practice for the next and practice for the next. It's like there's no big game. We get rid of the idea that success looks like a result, because it really is, that old adage of it's about the journey, not the destination. I really do believe that we're here to learn so much. And I'm probably off track again, but that I feel like it was divine. At times, I can't explain the feeling. There were times, especially early on, where I felt like I was moving in the right path, or somebody was protecting me. And then there were times that, this is really relevant, where I went away from my faith. And not in the sense where I didn't believe in God, just that I was not living in a way that resonated with that truth for many years. And I think I was just really lost. And when I came home in 2020, or really early 2020, it was March of 2020. You could do the math and figure out when what that was about. But it took a while. But I remember I was sitting there, and I used to do this thing where I was like, oh, I'm a good person. Why are bad things happening to me? I'm a good person. Why are bad things happening to me? I'm sitting there thinking to myself, one night, I'm like, I can't believe I have the nerve to complain about being a good person and having bad things happen to me, when I think about what Jesus went through.
Right.
You had a guy who was all good. He performed miracles. He did everything good for everyone. And they mocked him. They ridiculed him. They spit on him. They beat him. They made him carry his cross to his death and made him experience the most excruciating death possible. And in that moment, I'm just like, Gino, you do not have anything to complain about. And I watched this movie, and I wasn't watching movies for a while because I thought movies went to crap, like the quality. And out of nowhere, I turned on this movie called Father Stu. And
yep.
And you might remember what happened to Mark Wahlberg's character in it. At one point in time, he just went through this stroke of bad luck after he had gone to God. And somebody said to him, they're like, how do you still have this positive attitude? Like, you're dying, you're going through all this, like, you're in pain constantly. He's like, you're suffering. And he says, yeah, but it's the struggle. It's the struggle that brings me closer to God. And that just resonated so much, because when you're given something, when you're giving these struggles or these obstacles, it's, number one, God's not going to give you anything you can't handle.
Absolutely.
And
it says that in the good book.
And two, it helps you, like it's a gift. It really is a gift. Not only can you learn from those struggles, and they're an opportunity to get stronger in so many ways, but it helps you get like a fraction of maybe what it was like to go through that, like on a minuscule level. Does this make any sense?
Makes perfect sense. And I'll tell you what, you know the old adage, iron sharpens iron. Okay, and I believe that you can't know what good is until you know what bad is. See, the problem now, and this is my opinion, but I think a lot of people think that they have woe is me. And I don't want to say your pain's not as bad as this person's pain, because it will have different levels. But when we put people inside of a plastic bubble and we want to protect them from everything, then what happens is they don't know how to deal with any adversity. Mm-hmm. So when you have your faith, Jesus said, pick up your cross and follow me. He didn't say, listen, I'm going to put you in a plastic bubble and everything's going to be just wonderful. If that was the case, then we wouldn't, number one, have free will, because you're choosing, hey, I'm going to choose this path, but I know it might be difficult. But even if I don't choose that path, life is still difficult.
Right.
The question is whether I want to believe or not that I have someone there that says, I know, and not only do I know, I've been there, done that. And I think ultimately that to me was the takeaway from Jesus' life. That now God could say, look, I came down to human. Don't tell me I don't understand temptation. Don't tell me I don't understand sorrow. Don't tell me I don't understand pain. I did these things. And guess what? I didn't even have to do it. But I loved you so much that I did it anyways. And so I think when you look at that, it's exactly what you just said. Then you look at your life, but it's not woe is me or well, his pain was worse than mine, so I better. It's not that at all. It's saying, look, I got things that hurt me, but at the same time, it's like, it'll be all right. You'll get over it. You'll get through it. You just gotta trust it. And I think that's the whole. These times don't last forever. I mean, Saint Teresa was a good one, and I didn't know this, but in her autobiography, she basically, I don't want to say didn't have faith, but she was essentially going through that spiritual dryness for about 30 years, where she wasn't feeling anything in prayer. And it wasn't towards later in her life. And keep in mind, for all this time, she's still in India doing all these wonderful things, helping the poor, opening these homes, and just a struggle. And, she could easily say, what am I doing here? I've been doing these for 10 years for you, God, and this is the thing. She didn't. And it was finally towards the end of her life that it kind of, then it opened up and said, I want to, almost like I want to say, like, almost paraphrase, like, hey, I'm going to thank you for everything you've done. And it was the right thing to do. And then she really understood it, and it kind of got it. But when a person like that, the same thing like the fathers do, and they go through that, you want to look at them and say, what are you thinking? But when they come out the other side, they go, oh, this was an easy decision. The problem is we're almost so soft, we don't think of that as an easy decision.
Well, we're so caught up in whatever this is, whatever the societal rules that we've allowed ourselves to get sucked into. But if you've ever lived your life, if you try to live your life like Christ for 30 days, watch how it feels. Like at first,
watch how you get treated.
Watch how you get treated.
Right.
But then also, you might be like, we live in this society where I'm having a hard time processing this one out loud. But it's like when I've done random acts of kindness and nobody's known I've done them, like, test yourself there. Like help somebody without them or anyone else knowing that you helped them, and just watch how that feels, first of all, and live your life in service. Like, when I look at, I do believe in a life of service too. That doesn't mean I don't like going and making movies. That doesn't mean I don't like being in movies. That doesn't mean I don't like producing, but it feels so good to also help somebody. Like, to me, if you could find a way to be of service, I just think that you'll be such a happier person. I don't know.
No, that's a good point. I want to ask you a question, because this is something I actually struggled with, because I've been really trying in the last many years to not just live my faith, to read it, to understand it, to study it, to like I said, you can't. People that say, well, I'm religious, or I believe in a God, but I don't really do, then what do you believe? So I've kind of made the decision. I'm Catholic. I'm going to be Catholic. I'm going to jump in. That's my decision, but I'm going to learn as much as I can, not just to defend the faith, but to say, why do I even believe this? Is this real? So I do that kind of self-reflection. But over these last few years, I've really found that that's made it easier when you go through the dry times, because you say, like, I understand. Like, you have more of an understanding of what you're going through and why you're going through it. But when I started kind of getting into the film, and even some of the, the podcast, for example, I was really struggling. I still am. How do you promote yourself without coming off as, prideful? You gotta sell your work. You've got to promote yourself, but you don't want to come off as being not humble. And I was really like, I don't know how to do this. And the only the only moment I had where I said, maybe this is the right thing was, as I was filming, I did get a chance to meet children of the prisoners. And I'll just say that, as I'm getting to meet people through this process, a couple of things. One is I'm as kind as I possibly can be to people, period. Not just for this, but just in general. I do try. But when you listen to people, no matter what you're doing, they just want to be heard. And so, just by talking to this person and letting them speak and recording them, and you go, wow, like, I get how I'm doing something. But by the way, God, I have to go out and tell everyone how great I'm going to be and how great my film is going to be. You're like, there's no it's very hard to know if that's the right, if I should pursue that or not.
Well, I think you bring up a really great point. I wish I had the answer for it, because I think self-promotion is the most challenging part of the industry for me. I didn't even really like social media. I got on, I remember at one time back when it was Twitter and Instagram, I had accounts created because I was on the show, and the show had asked us to do it. And then they would send you materials every week. Like, here's photos, here's clips, whatever. And then they want you to promote the show. And to me, it felt like such a narcissistic thing.
Right. Exactly.
And I mean, that's how I felt. Like, I was like, okay, people are just going to look at this and think, oh, great, more about Gino or more about this. And this is all this guy does is promote, you know. So for a while there, I would try to find other ways to do it, where when they would send me something on the show, I would caption it or say something about somebody else in the show. Now, I was the only one doing this. So you're certainly not promoting yourself while you're doing that, but it was my way to kind of shield what was uncomfortable about it for me. I don't have an answer for it, Steve. I think we're living in a society where this became the normal, and I don't agree with the normal.
Right.
Like, I don't post a lot on Instagram, and I will say I didn't back then either, and I think that hurt in terms of a growth of a following or whatever you
Right.
want to call it, but it just didn't resonate with the truth or my truth.
So that's funny because, I don't have Instagram. I have Facebook, which I think they own Instagram. I could easily just swap it over. But the only thing I post on there is when I put out a new episode.
But you have to do that.
Right.
I mean, that's the whole point. You're doing it to share with
Right.
people, right?
But at some point, you want to, how do I say, like, you want to be known so that people will know your show is there. If I don't know you, I won't know what you're in to follow you then.
Understood.
And so you have to share things. Hey, everybody, did you see my latest article on this? And you're like, oh, geez. I mean, I really do. I feel so awkward doing that. I don't know if it's because I'm actually, I don't know if you're familiar with the Squibbs-Meyer test. I'm an INTJ. So that means I'm an introvert.
So am I.
So
you don't come across like one at all, though.
Well, I tell you what, a lot of people say that, but believe it or not, as funny as it sounds, I really struggle with the first line to meet people. Like if I'm at a party, if I don't know people, I will be in the corner. I won't have a problem with that. And the other thing that I struggle with is, I don't know if it's necessarily because it's an I, but I have a hard time. I'll give you a good example. I did an interview, and I did it in Italian. And my Italian's, it's okay. I can survive, but I'm not good.
Okay.
But every time I hear my voice or see my picture, I just cringe. And it's like, that's why I have a hard time saying, hey, look at me. I'm like, oh, I can't get comfortable with it. I just can't get comfortable looking at myself there.
I think with your product, like, whether it was a film, whether it's your film or your podcast, be proud of what you put out and put it out there. And I think if it's quality, I have to believe, at least for me, that if I'm proud of something, I put it out there, and if it's quality, it'll catch on. And if it's right, let's say there's something divine there too. I do believe in a plan.
Right. I think there's a time and place for everything, and I think we are. I do believe, to your point, I think we're instruments, and I think sometimes we're put into positions. About a year ago, I was doing.
But I think you're really good at this, by the way. This is. I'm actually.
I like his attitude, folks, and we're going to keep him. No, but I mean, I was actually doing a podcast. Well, I try to make this the guest show. I mean, ultimately, nobody wants to hear me; they want to hear you. But I mean, I remember when I was doing a Pentecost Today podcast for a while, and it was one of those kind of a similar. I'm thinking, like, man, this is crazy. I always want to do a religious show because I want to express my faith, even my doubts. And a few people reached out and they said, you're so authentic because I would literally say, I don't understand this. Why are you guys doing this? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, I'm like I said, I'm stupidly honest, and I speak from the heart. And to your point, I think people recognize that. And if you have something to offer, and you say, all right, God, I don't know. You tell me what you want me to do, and you just do it. I do think it works out. That's why, I still struggle. Even trying to get a sponsor for the podcast, it is so uncomfortable to ask people, hey, will you sponsor me? You're like, oh, I just don't, I can't do it. I just can't. It's so hard to do it, but
it's tough. I empathize with you, but I think that there is a couple things that you have to. Your why. We all have a why, right? We all could be going after the same thing, but our whys are drastically different. Why we're doing something. Know your integrity. Know your heart's intention, and then be secure in that. Like, you're passionate about this. I can tell you're having a fun time doing this, and I want more people to know about you now too. Like, even just sitting here for as long as we've been sitting here, I mean, I think it would just be great if more and more people knew about you. As far
You
as
hear that, folks? There it is.
and I think that's pretty cool that you do one. You say you do another podcast as well.
I do once in a while, ironically enough. It's called the Unlikely Catholic Podcast. I just started that
There
one
you
not
go.
too long ago. I was doing Pentecost Today for a while, and then it was just a timing issue. We just couldn't get on the same. Me and my co, we just couldn't get on the same schedule. And I was at the time, I just had so much going. That's when I was transitioning jobs. I was, I was. One day we're going to sit down over either a beer or coffee, whatever your beverage of choice is. And I'm going to explain about the 3 different jobs I had at the same time while I was doing this, while I was doing another podcast. Oh,
Okay.
by the way, this is at the same time. I was starting to film the documentary. So it's been a rough year plus for me.
No, that's I look forward to that. But this is something else too. Like, I think you got more in the tank with this too. When you start adding video to these podcasts too, you never know what you could do.
Well,
It's
from your lips to God's ears. You hear that, Joe? Joe's the engineer. By the way, I want to thank Joe Hale for doing my engineering for the last probably 2+ years. So, Joe, thank you very much. And looks like we might need those cameras after all, buddy. By the way, these cameras were put on here because we were going to do film. Funny enough, on Pentecost Today, we were going to do video because we wanted to also throw it up on YouTube. And so Joe and Ray, they're the 2 guys that work here, wonderful, wonderful guys. And they started setting all this up and coordinating it. And after all that, she ended up not using it. He was like, "What?" And I was like, "Joe, don't blame me."
are they here now, or are they just here in spirit? Joe and who's the other one?
Ray.
Joe
Let me
and
tell you
Ray.
something. They're always here in
Okay.
spirit, body, and spirit. Right, Joe? Right, Ray? I speak to them as if they're listening.
Yeah.
No, he'll be editing later, so that's my message to him. But Gino, again, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show. And I also want to appreciate you actually coming to the studio. I love it when guests come in the studio, but I'm also grateful when people can't make it and still make the effort to call in. So I appreciate you taking the drive up here. If people want to find out more information, where do they go?
On the film tax credit.
And you.
You can go in for the film tax credit. You can go to filmandpa.com. For me, I don't know. I'm sure you can Google it and
We'll
figure
find
it
you.
out. Yeah.
I'll put a link out there in the description.
Yeah.
But I'm also going to put a link to the
You're
PA
not
Film
missing
Commission.
anything.
That'd
It's
be
fine.
fun. But I'm also going to put a link to the Film Commission down in the description so you can check it out and more information. Again, if you're in Pennsylvania, this is a wonderful office. These are wonderful guys, and they will help you out. Trust me. If you're not in Pennsylvania, I do encourage you to check your state. Other states do similar.
No, if you're not in Pennsylvania, come here. We'll
There
help.
you go.
We'll help you. Do not listen to Steve. He does not know what he's talking about. If you're not in Pennsylvania, we absolutely positively want you to come to Pennsylvania.
No one else does this.
Plant seeds.
Oh, that's right. You know what? They don't have to live in
Plants-
Pennsylvania.
No.
Oh,
No.
man. If you're not
No,
in
no,
Pennsylvania,
no.
you need to be filming in Pennsylvania. That's
yes,
right.
Come to Pennsylvania, plant seeds, grow roots, make your movies, tell your stories in PA because PA is a great place to tell
That's
stories.
right. That's right. Don't listen to me because it turns out I kept thinking residency, but you don't have to be here. You just have to film in
No,
Pennsylvania.
you were just available for the PA producer reserve portion of it. There's 95 million other
Oh, you hear that, folks?
tax incentive dollars available.
Listen, we cannot make it any more clear. If your film, big, small, it doesn't matter. Come to Pennsylvania. Website links in the description. Good luck with your project. Because as one who's doing one, I get it. So, Gino, again, I want to thank you very much. And as always, I want to thank my sponsors. I want to thank my engineer, Joe Hale at Robert Morris University. And again, God bless you, folks. And we will see you when we see you.